So please welcome Edith Yeung, GP at Raise Capital, and Brian Shroder, CEO of Binance US, in conversation with Bill Owens of CBS News.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. We've decided not to talk about crypto because it's been covered too much. We're going to talk about Russia. No, kidding. So it's interesting. When we were asked to do this panel many weeks ago, the blurb that surrounded it was, cryptocurrencies are having their moment in the sun. So, it's heated up, that's for sure. Let's just start with where we are today. Give us your take on what's transpired over these last few weeks in a kind of macro way, if you would, Edith.
Okay, fine. I think, obviously for the last few weeks, it's definitely not a doubt moment, starting with sort of the Terra Luna collapse with stablecoin. It really, really drove the crypto market down from closer to 2 trillion, which I checked this morning was now 900 billion. But having said that, I'm the glass half full type person always. I've been tracking crypto since 2017. And in 2017, it was about 400 billion. So in some sense, 5 years later, we're still, two and a half times compared to a few years before. And valuation for most of the early stage crypto companies have dropped quite a bit. In combination with what happened with Celsius a few days ago, this market definitely seems a little bit gloom and doom. But having said that, I think crypto is so much more than just trading or token prices. It's really about, crypto is just a token, is a component of Web3. And there's just so much more to be built. And in many sense, in January 2018, the last downturn when I invested in Solana, token prices was even worse, about 10,000 at the time. So I think the worst time, is the best time to build.
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing is basically a broader pullback in the general market. And so my Bitcoin is not as down as much as my ARK investment or my Uber stock or my Netflix, or we can go on and on and on. And so for us, right, as Binance US, this is not the first crypto winter that we will live through. It will not be the last crypto winter that we live through. And so what we as a company are trying to do is focus on what's important, which is primarily around generating user value and putting out products and services that people love.
Edith, you told me that you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said you began to invest in crypto in 2013? And you also made a point to me when we chatted over the phone that, and I think it's good context, is there's been volatility. You've been in part of this, you've been watching this as an investor for a long time. So what would you say to people about that, give them some context around the crypto market and the volatility that is built into it?
Yeah, so I invested in my first Bitcoin in 2013. Didn't make me an expert per se, and for a long time, really nothing happened. And the last bull run around 2016, 2017, a lot of excitement around it. But I remember, when I committed to invest in Solana in January 2018, a lot of investors backed out. And in fact, when crazy token prices sort of dropped, in some sense, a lot of people who want to make quick money can no longer do that. So a lot of founders or investors sort of just backed out and completely out of the market. I actually think that is a good thing for an industry, because in some sense, if all you want is to make quick money, you really are not there to build a future. So this is probably the third time I have seen this, and I think it's actually a good adjustment to the industry itself. And whoever is continue to build, regardless of token prices, those are the ones that we really want to invest in.
Brian, earlier this week, Barron's talked about crypto having a Lehman moment. But also this week, you've announced that you're hiring. Finances, you've thousands of openings, right? Correct?
Yep.
Talk a little bit about your own company and the future you see at the moment.
So economically, we as Binance US have very limited to no exposure to kind of the turmoil that's happening in the market. That is because we never did margin trading, we never did lending, and we never took any loans. And so we're effectively kind of insulated from a lot of the turmoil that's happening, though obviously impacted by the broader market movement. What I think is different about Binance US is we're a pretty young company. We've only been around for a little over 2 years now. And so we are growing from a much smaller base. So we are effectively in our growth stage now. Historically, we've only been a one product company, spot trading. We just announced staking for the first time ever a couple weeks ago. And so what we're doing is we're growing products and services, which allows us to have a more diversified base. And from that, we need more top talent. And so we are hiring. We obviously also timed our seed round quite well, raising $200 million in April. And so we're going into this crypto winter with immense strength and the wind at our back.
Our question for both of you. Contagion is a word that you hear a lot right now.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a couple of the tokens. How concerned should people be who are invested in some of these tokens and other things be about a contagion within the crypto landscape?
Well, I mean, contagion is real, obviously, and we see this happening in real time playing out. And I think that, over the next several weeks and months, there will be more kind of casualties in the crypto ecosystem. But I think that, this natural churn, I think, is healthy for the industry, because what it's doing is it's removing the excess that basically flooded into it. And what will remain will be the companies that put customers first, have sustainable economic business models, and those are the ones that will thrive, coming out of the crypto winter. I think a lot has been written on the similarities to the dot-com bubble bursting, and out of the dot-com bubble, Amazon emerged. We are feeling pretty good that hopefully we are kind of in the Amazon position.
I think most of the companies that is working in the Web3 crypto space are exchanges, which many of them are doing really, really well, regardless of sometimes there's access, and obviously layoffs sometimes, but I think both FTX.US, Binance.US is growing really nicely. And then if you look at sort of the top 10 token on CoinMarketCap, is either stable coin, regardless is Circled or UST, of course, no more UST, still Tether, or sort of the layer one, regardless is Ethereum or Solana. And so the top 10 is really around layer one infrastructure token or stable coins, or of course, Bitcoin is sort of the digital gold. So in many sense, I think I would highly encourage, if it's a lot of Web2 company just trying to be Web3 and slap a token on it just for the sake of it, I don't think those projects will survive. And that's why, at Raise Capital, we really want to focus our investment on infrastructure, which is things that, what will be the next generation of Amazon Web Services? Those are the things that I think is super interesting. There's just so much more to be built, particularly on the developers' tools. And now we're seeing, regardless it's DeFi or NFT, which is the mass is coming in, we want to use it. That's we really need more plumbing to make sure that this particular industry is here to stay. And there's a lot of things, building blocks are still missing.
In speaking with both of you, you made a point of talking about the Asian markets, right? Right now, what's happening, the West is sort of looking very much in it's just right here in our own backyard. But in Asia, it's a bit more rigorous in terms of how they see the future, perhaps. I wonder if you can just give some thoughts about that, some insight into the Asian markets.
I can't wait to go back to Hong Kong. And if you look at sort of and Brian probably have more statistic related to trading, but the top 10 countries, at least half of them are actually coming from Asia, regardless as at the Vietnam, Korea, Hong Kong, Japan of the world. Those are the really, really active. That's why we see games like Exit Infinity actually is a team from Vietnam, or Step N actually originally from China. there's going to be a lot more, I think, sort of the consumer level talent and teams that's actually coming from Asia. I think in the US, there's a lot of amazing financial talents. Obviously, all the great exchanges are in the US. But we definitely need to sort of keep our eyes open for talent worldwide. We invested in another company called Allbridge, which is originally from Ukraine, or Bundler, which is already from the UK. These are just amazing worldwide talent that is not just in North America.
Brian?
Yeah, so I think that there was immense talent, and frankly speaking, I think the Asian markets were far advanced ahead of the United States, in particular in fintech, over the last decade. And I think that what's interesting now is I think that with crypto, it's a little bit more balanced. And so I think you see innovation happening in the United States. You see some crackdowns in Asian markets that are actually scaring away innovation in that space. And so it's a little bit more balanced than fintech, which I think historically skewed more to innovation from Asia.
Yeah, and also on that note, which remind me with the China government a little bit sort of push crypto away, it's driving a lot of talent from the Hong Kong, China of the world to Singapore, Dubai, or coming back to the US.
What about regulation? What has this acute moment in crypto done in terms of getting the further attention of the US government, international governments? Where do we see regulation? What's next?
So, so we are regulated kind of from every angle. As Binance US, we are getting our money transmitting licenses at the state, so effectively we have 60 regulators, if you count all 50 states and the districts and Puerto Rico and the territories. And then what's, I think, more interesting in I think the nature of the question is what's going to happen at the federal level. And, we are actually quite optimistic. And that is because a couple of weeks ago, Senator Loomis and Gillibrand, they released a bipartisan bill. How many things in today's society can you say are bipartisan? And yet you have bipartisan effort to kind of regulate the crypto markets, define stablecoins, put in a regulatory framework with which we can all operate. I'm actually quite hopeful that we will make meaningful progress on this relatively soon.
I think it's very typical US style. There's going to be some lawsuit, a lot of lobbying, but I think like around trading and also stablecoin, I'm betting on like there will be actual true regulatory framework that should hopefully ready to go and really have the US to give its blessing, unlike other countries around the world.
How much will regulation help with the trust in terms of just the population who may not feel safe right now, investors who don't feel safe getting into cryptocurrency? How about that, just in terms of regulation? Will it feel to the average investor, not the institutional investor, that, okay, there's some oversight here and we can get into the water?
I actually think that, because it's not regulated yet, but it didn't deteriorate from, the Goldman Sachs or the JP Morgan or Morgan Stanley of the world offering like Bitcoin ETF type products. And I think that these financial oligarchs wouldn't get into the game if they don't think crypto is here to stay or the future. So therefore, of course, there's a whole lot of other tokens that are listed on Binance.us that is not ready for sort of the mass to understand. But I think, between FTX and Binance are doing a lot of education to get the mass to understand what's happening.
Yeah, I do think that regulation is important to a certain portion of the adoption curve, right? So certainly we have our innovators, we have people doing, but I think that to the general public, being able to say that the US government has defined stablecoin as such, and therefore this is a stablecoin, I think that brings a lot of comfort. I think to the extent that the US population says, this is the CFTC is the regulator and they are solely focused on overseeing it, there's more comfort to participating in those sorts of markets where there is sort of regulatory guidance and clarity.
I'm curious what you both think when Bill Gates or Warren Buffett come out with these sort of thunderclaps against crypto, and just last week Bill Gates made a lot of news. What do you think about when two of the richest people in the world come out and say there's nothing to this, you'd be a fool to get involved in it? Make some news
I'll
here.
Try.
Make some news.
Yeah. I don't want to offend those two. So I think that having broad, sweeping opinions in a negative sense just means that you don't have appreciation for the nuance of the technology that underpins it, right? And Bitcoin is very different from stablecoin, is very different from algorithmic
Ethereum.
trading, and you can go down and down. And each project, each token project itself is so nuanced and has so many different ways in terms of how it's structured, its governance, its utility, its token economics. And to paint a broad picture negative just means that you haven't spent enough time understanding what basically it can unlock, right? And I think that, sorry, just to finish, I think that what this kind of period, this crypto window period, what we're excited about is understanding, how do we take blockchain technology, how do we take cryptocurrency, and how do we apply it to historical innovation, or historical models that deserve disruption and innovation. And I think that that is the thing that we're focused in on, is how do we take something and make it better, faster, cheaper with the technology of blockchain and crypto.
I really want to encourage Bill Gates to not look at the token prices, but really focus on the technology itself.
Yeah.
If you think about it, even Internet Explorer have retired. So, which means that even Microsoft should actually think about, this is not just about crazy trading. There is a fundamental belief, particularly from a user point of view, where I don't want these big platforms to monetize with my own data. I want to own a part of this community. This is a new generation. Web3 is all about economy of ownership. And from day one, the token itself is basically make so that the equity ownership pushes so much earlier. So I have a lot of respect for these great billionaires, but this is not a billionaire game. This is, in fact, the other way around, is to get the mass to own a piece of this much more earlier on than letting the Microsoft or the Google of the world monetize everything.
You mentioned to me on the phone that this is akin to the early days of the internet. Not everything worked, but it was clear that there was a fundamental way forward in technology.
I started my career in Web 1 and information only, and actively working on Web 2, which is all about social. Web 3 is all about ownership, and the token side of things is just basically an accelerator of it. But the essence of Web 3 is really get all of us to be part of it, so that there's no more of sort of the Facebook-like, monetize my data. This is just not right.
Brian, I'll give you the last word on that. Just where are we in the sort of the narrative or the timeline of cryptocurrency?
Well, I think we've only really just begun, right? I don't think that we've even kind of begun to crystallize the impact that this technology can have on not only financial services, but like the economy writ large. And so it's early days, so stay tuned. There's lots of exciting things to come.
Great. Thank you both. Thank you all for coming here and listening. These two
Thank you, Bill.
very smart people. Thank you. Thank you all.